The ISS Retribution was never supposed to fly. When the engineers at the Orion shipyards first laid eyes on its schematics, they laughed. A human-built warship, cobbled together from outdated Earth technology and salvaged wreckage from long-forgotten skirmishes, was a joke in the eyes of the galaxy's elite fleets. The Zalari warlords sneered at it, the Dominion bureaucrats dismissed it outright, and the Varrock High Admirals labeled it a floating scrapyard. And yet, here it was, drifting silently in the void of the ardent expanse, waiting. Its dull, mismatched plating reflected the dim glow of the system's dying sun. To anyone watching, it was little more than a derelict, another failed human experiment abandoned in the cold abyss. But inside, deep within its reinforced hull, its crew sat in tense silence. "Confirm enemy fleet composition," the captain ordered, his voice calm but firm. A junior officer tapped at a cracked control panel, her fingers gliding across outdated screens patched together with human ingenuity and stubbornness. "Scanning now. We've got 6 Dominion battlecruisers, 2 dreadnoughts, and—" Her breath hitched. "Sir, the Zalari have sent the Imperator-class warship. It's the biggest damn thing we've ever seen, I know," the captain muttered. His gaze hardened as he studied the incoming fleet. This was exactly what they wanted. Across the galaxy, human technology had always been treated as inferior, primitive, unreliable, and hopelessly outdated compared to the sleek, hyper-advanced warships of the dominant species. Humans, despite their relentless expansion, were never considered a true military power. Their fleets were composed of repurposed cargo haulers, outdated fighters, and ships held together by sheer desperation and duct tape. But the Retribution was different. It had been built in the shadows, forged from the forgotten wreckage of 1,000 battles, each piece of scrap carrying a legacy of defeat and hard-earned lessons. Humans had taken the best of what they scavenged, reverse-engineered the rest, and injected it with something no other species understood: unpredictability. The ship was alive in ways no AI-driven war machine could comprehend. "All hands, prepare for combat," the captain ordered. The bridge lights dimmed. Inside the vessel, reactor cores, once dismissed as unstable, roared to life. The Retribution may have looked like junk, but deep within its hull, it carried secrets the Dominion and the Zalari had no idea existed. As the enemy fleet closed in, their commanders confident in an easy victory, the Retribution sent out one last mocking transmission. "This is the scrapyard reject you laughed at. Let's see who's laughing when this is over." And with that, the battle began. The silence before the storm was always the worst. The crew of the Retribution could feel it in their bones, the weight of an impossible battle ahead, the suffocating certainty that they were outgunned, outmatched, and, in the eyes of the galaxy, already dead. But humans had never cared for odds. "Enemy fleet closing in," the junior officer reported. Her voice was steady now, the fear in her eyes replaced with something else: determination. The captain stood at the center of the bridge, eyes locked on the massive Imperator-class warship leading the charge. That behemoth alone carried enough firepower to reduce planets to dust. The Dominion battlecruisers flanked it in a menacing wedge formation, their sleek, obsidian hulls gliding through space like silent executioners. And then, there was the Retribution, a patchwork warship with rusted plating, outdated weapons, and a reputation as the ugliest thing to ever grace a battlefield. A goddamn coffin, if you asked the Dominion. The captain exhaled slowly. "Bring up the failsafe systems." A few officers hesitated. The failsafes were barely tested, experimental at best, suicidal at worst. But hesitation had no place here. "Aye, sir. Initializing now." Across the Retribution, Long-dormant systems hummed to life. Unlike the Dominion's warships, which relied on clean energy weapons and precision strike ordnance, the Retribution had been designed with an entirely different philosophy: brutality. While Dominion ships fired elegant beams of plasma and guided torpedoes, humans still swore by old-fashioned kinetic weaponry: solid slugs, mass accelerators, rail cannons that didn't just burn through hulls, but tore them apart with sheer, unrelenting force. And beneath the surface of this scrap heap, an unholy fusion of alien technology and human ingenuity was about to be unleashed for the first time. "Enemy fleet is hailing us," an officer said. The captain smirked. "Let them talk." A Dominion commander appeared on the main display, his sharp features twisted into an expression of condescension. A Dominion commander appeared on the main display, his sharp features twisted into an expression of condescension. "This is High Commander Tarsik of the Dominion Fleet. Human vessel, you are outnumbered and surrounded. Power down your weapons, and we may grant you a swift end." The captain chuckled, shaking his head. "Tarsik, buddy, you have no idea what you're about to walk into." The Dominion commander sneered. "This trash pile you call a warship is an embarrassment to your kind. You..." Fire. Before the Dominion commander could react, the Retribution struck first. No warning shots, no posturing. A single slug, accelerated to near-relativistic speeds, erupted from the ship's spinal railgun. A weapon stolen from a Varak dreadnought, modified beyond recognition by human engineers and loaded with a tungsten core wrapped in destabilized antimatter. The round traveled so fast that, for a fraction of a second, space itself seemed to warp around it. The Dominion battlecruiser in its path never stood a chance. The slug punched through its shields as if they were made of paper, carving a hole straight through its reinforced hull before igniting in a cascading explosion of antimatter energy. One of the Dominion's finest warships, obliterated in an instant. For the first time, there was silence on the enemy's comms. Then the screaming started. The Retribution surged forward. It was no longer a scrapyard joke. It was the deadliest warship in the galaxy. The Retribution roared through space, its engines screaming as it cut through the void like a beast unleashed. The Dominion fleet, once so smug in their superiority, was now scrambling. Their sleek, precision-engineered warships, built for controlled engagements and tactical supremacy, had just witnessed something they had never accounted for: raw, unrelenting human brutality. "Battlecruiser destroyed," an officer confirmed, still wide-eyed at what had just happened. The enemy formation broke apart in an instant. The Dominion's war doctrine relied on calculated strikes, well-coordinated maneuvers. But humans? Humans brawled. "Charge the Hellstorm array," the captain ordered. The Dominion had no idea what that meant. The Hellstorm was a monstrosity, a weapon never meant to exist. It was a chaotic blend of stolen plasma cannon designs, hypervelocity kinetics, and something human engineers had created just for the hell of it. "Dominion dreadnought locking onto us." The captain didn't flinch. "Redirect the armor plating, scatter pattern." The Retribution's armor shifted. Unlike the smooth, uniform plating of Dominion warships, its hull was a jigsaw puzzle of overlapping layers, scavenged from dozens of different technologies. Now it moved, shifting into an unpredictable, constantly realigning pattern that made it impossible for targeting systems to get a clean lock. "Fire the Hellstorm." The weapon discharged with a thunderous boom, even in the vacuum of space. A storm of hypercharged slugs, magnetically accelerated to obscene speeds, tore through the battlefield like an unholy shotgun blast. One battlecruiser lost its entire starboard section in a single burst. Another took 3 direct hits and detonated like a dying star. The dreadnought fired back, its energy lances carving massive swaths of fire across the void, but the Retribution didn't fight fair. Engage Phantom Drive, another human abomination. The Retribution shimmered, its profile twisting, phasing in and out of visible space as its stolen quantum drive, modified in ways that should have been illegal, made it vanish for microseconds at a time. The dreadnought's weapons missed their marks. Then the Retribution was behind it. Launch the gravitic harpoons. Another bastardized weapon. Thick, coiled cables, tipped with gravity-warping anchors, shot forward and pierced the dreadnought's hull, embedding themselves like parasitic claws. Then they pulled. The dreadnought lurched, its engines shrieking against the impossible force dragging it off course. Open fire! The Retribution unloaded everything it had. Mass drivers, rail cannons, plasma turrets, every stolen, jury-rigged, and barely stable weapon on board spewed death into the Dominion flagship. The dreadnought convulsed, its shields collapsing, its hull crumbling, until it erupted in a blinding explosion. And just like that, the Dominion's strongest warship was gone. The battlefield fell silent. The remaining Dominion ships hesitated. For the first time in history, a single human warship, mocked as scrap, dismissed as garbage, had torn through the most advanced fleet in the known galaxy. The enemy commander's voice crackled over the comms. Humans? What are you? The captain smirked. We're the ones who don't play by your rules. The battlefield was littered with the wreckage of what had once been the Dominion's pride. Explosions still flickered in the distance, like dying stars, while the Retribution loomed in the silence, a predator waiting for its next victim. The remaining Dominion warships, battlecruisers, smaller corvettes, even a few Zalari escorts, hesitated. Their fleet had outnumbered the Retribution 10-1 at the start. Now, that equation no longer meant anything. They're stalling, one of the officers muttered, his hands gripping the controls tightly. Of course they are, the captain said, eyes locked onto the enemy formation. They've never seen anything like this. They don't know how to react. Dominion war doctrine was built on certainty. Their warships were sleek, their weapons advanced, their tactics flawless, but only in predictable engagements. They relied on numerical superiority, overwhelming firepower, and control. Humans didn't fight that way. Incoming transmission, the comms officer reported. The Dominion commander's face reappeared on the main display. His once arrogant features were now drawn tight with disbelief and, yes, even fear. This is madness, he spat, as if saying it aloud would change reality. You've accomplished nothing, human. Your ship is still outnumbered, and even if you win here, the Dominion will send another fleet, and another. You cannot fight forever. The captain leaned forward, a slow smirk playing at his lips. Who said we need to fight forever? With a flick of his hand, he cut the transmission. Activate the Maelstrom protocol, he ordered. A hush fell over the bridge. Even among the Retribution's hardened crew, that command sent a ripple of unease. The Maelstrom was the contingency plan. A weapon so reckless, so absolutely destructive, that it had never been tested in actual combat. Because the truth was simple. If it worked, there wouldn't be a battlefield left to test it again. Are you sure, sir? An officer asked hesitantly. The captain's gaze never wavered. Fire it up. All across the Retribution, deep within its scavenged hull, hidden compartments and dormant subsystems rumbled to life. This was where the Dominion had truly underestimated humanity. They thought the Retribution was just a ship. They didn't realize it was a trap. Beneath the warship's cobbled-together plating, hidden behind layers of repurposed Dominion shielding, lay the most terrifying weapon humans had ever devised. It wasn't just a railgun. It wasn't just antimatter payloads. It was something worse. a stolen experimental gravitational destabilizer ripped from a fallen Varak research station, combined with human ingenuity and reckless abandon. A device that could, in theory, turn the very fabric of space into a storm. The Maelstrom. On the bridge, the countdown began. 10. The Dominion ships started to retreat, their commanders realizing too late that this was no longer a fight. It was a slaughter. 9. The Zalari warlords, watching from their distant command ships, turned their backs. They had never respected humanity, but now they feared them. 8. The gravitational cores deep inside the Retribution pulsed, distorting space in unpredictable ways. 7. The captain exhaled slowly. "Make peace with whatever gods you believe in," he murmured. 6. The Dominion warships ran, not a tactical retreat, not a calculated fallback. They ran. 5. "Power level stabilizing," an officer reported. "We're reaching critical threshold." 4. The stars flickered. 3 dots. Reality shuddered. 2. The Dominion's remaining ships vanished into hyperspace, fleeing blindly, their formations broken. 1. The Retribution fired. The void collapsed. A violent, churning vortex of gravitational distortions ripped through space where the Dominion fleet had once stood, warping light itself, shattering debris into dust. Where there had once been a battlefield, there was now nothing. No wreckage, no bodies, no evidence that the Dominion had ever been there. The Maelstrom had consumed them all. The Retribution hung in space, victorious, bruised, scarred, but undefeated. A silence settled over the crew as the realization sank in. They had just rewritten the rules of warfare, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The war wasn't over. Not yet. But after today, one thing was clear. Humanity would never be underestimated again. The battlefield was silent now, but the weight of what had just happened lingered like an unseen specter. The Retribution drifted through the void, surrounded by nothing but the remnants of its victory. A patch of space where once an armada had stood, now reduced to nothingness. The crew remained frozen, watching the scanners as they struggled to make sense of the impossible. "Sir," one of the officers broke the silence, voice unsteady. There's nothing left. No debris, no escape pods, just empty space." They had wiped out an entire fleet with a single weapon. The captain exhaled, his fingers tightening around the railing of the command deck. "It worked," he muttered. The bridge was still dimly lit, the emergency lighting flickering from the strain of their systems. The Maelstrom had drained almost every ounce of power they had left. Shields were offline, weapons were cooling down, the engines sputtered weakly, they were exposed, and the Dominion was still out there. "Status report," the captain ordered, his voice snapping the crew out of their collective daze. "Power core is stabilizing," an engineer responded, "but we burned through nearly half our reserves just to keep the hull from imploding." "Primary weapons offline," another officer added. "Hull integrity at 70%. Shields will take time to recharge. And, sir, the Phantom drive is completely fried. Whatever that blast did, it wasn't just external. We shorted something deep in the core." The captain grimaced. That meant no cloaking, no quick escape. "Any enemy signals?" "Negative," the comms officer said. Dominion survivors ran, and the Zalari, well, they're watching, but they're keeping their distance. No movements toward us. Of course, they were watching. The Zalari were opportunists, warlords who thrived on power, fear, and spectacle. They had dismissed humanity as a primitive nuisance for decades, never worth the effort of real conflict. Now they had witnessed a single human warship annihilate an entire Dominion fleet in minutes. They weren't laughing anymore. The captain tapped his fingers against the console. "Put me through to the Zalari command ship," he said. The crew hesitated, but followed the order. Moments later, the main screen flickered to life, revealing a Zalari warlord seated on an opulent throne of polished obsidian and pulsating biometal. His scaled face twisted in an expression that could only be described as wary curiosity. "Human," the warlord drawled, his voice layered with a rasping accent. "You have surprised us." "Glad to hear it," the captain replied. There was a pause. The Zalari were known for their arrogance, their belief in strength above all. And right now, they were reevaluating everything they had ever thought about humanity. "We have no quarrel with your species," the warlord finally said. "Not after this. The Dominion will not recover from such a loss easily. You may have bought your people time, but they will come for you. They must come for you. You understand this, yes?" The captain nodded. Of course, the Dominion wouldn't let this go. Humanity had just done the unthinkable, humiliated them in open combat, shattered their reputation as the ultimate power in the galaxy. There would be no negotiations, no peace talks. This was war now, and humanity had just fired the first real shot. "Let them come," the captain said, his voice quiet but firm. The Zalari warlord studied him for a long moment before chuckling, a deep, rumbling sound that echoed through the bridge. "Perhaps we will speak again, human." The transmission cut off. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. "Sir," an officer asked hesitantly, "do you think the Zalari will—" "They won't make a move until they're certain they can win," the captain interrupted. "And after today? They're not sure of anything anymore." A grim smirk played at his lips. "Which means we still have time to make this ship even deadlier." The crew absorbed that for a moment. Then, one by one, they straightened, shoulders squaring with something new. Not just determination, not just survival. Purpose. The Retribution had been mocked as junk. Now it was the deadliest warship in the galaxy. And this was only the beginning. The Retribution limped through the void, battered but victorious. The aftershocks of the maelstrom still rippled through the ship's systems, forcing engineers to reroute power, reboot failing subsystems, and manually recalibrate weapons that had been pushed to their absolute limits. The Dominion fleet was gone. The Zalari warlords were watching from a distance, unwilling to engage. But this was far from over. "How long until the engines are back to full power?" the captain asked. "Could be hours," the chief engineer responded over comms, frustration thick in his voice. "That maelstrom blast nearly cooked half our conduits. We've got patch jobs holding for now, but if we push the thrusters too hard, we might tear our own ship apart." Not ideal. The Dominion had retreated, but they would be back. The captain turned to his tactical officer. "What's the closest human outpost?" "Fort Vesper," she answered. "Roughly 6 light-years from our current position. If we can get a distress signal through, they might be able to send reinforcements or at least resupply us." He considered it. Fort Vesper wasn't just any outpost. It was a heavily fortified stronghold, a symbol of humanity's defiance in the outer systems. If the Retribution could make it there, they could rearm, repair, and prepare for what came next. But getting there wouldn't be easy. "Sir," the comms officer cut in, voice tight with urgency. "I'm picking up residual energy spikes. Small distortions, not enough to be a fleet, but something's out there." The captain's jaw tightened. "Stealth ships?" The officer nodded. "Could be Dominion, could be someone else, but they're watching us." Of course, they were. No way in hell the Dominion would just accept this humiliation. They had likely left something behind. A probe, a stealth corvette, maybe even an assassin's ship, to track the Retribution's movements. "They don't want to engage yet," the tactical officer murmured. "They're waiting for reinforcements. They want to pin us down." That changed things. The Retribution was a beast in battle. But right now, it was bleeding, outnumbered, vulnerable, running on fumes. They needed a way out. "Options?" the captain asked. The bridge fell into silence. Then a low chuckle came from the engineering console. "We could pretend to be dead?" the chief engineer suggested. The captain raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "Fake a reactor overload," the engineer said. "We vent power, overheat a few non-critical systems, and make it look like we're on the brink of catastrophic failure. Maybe even detonate some external plating for effect. If those stealth ships think we're done for, they might send in a boarding party. Or worse, move in to confirm the kill. That's when we strike." Risky. But then again, so was everything they did. The captain nodded. "Do it." Across the Retribution, systems flickered and dimmed. Emergency sirens wailed, hull vents opened, and superheated gases spewed into the void, making the ship look as though it were on the verge of a reactor implosion. The stealth ships reacted instantly. "They're moving," the tactical officer whispered. "Just a few. Small craft. Could be scouts, could be Dominion assassins," the captain finished. Because of course the Dominion wouldn't settle for just tracking them. They wanted to end this ship once and for all. "All hands," the captain ordered. "Prepare for close-quarters combat." The Retribution may have been built to win against overwhelming odds. But now, it was about to show the galaxy something new. That even in the depths of defeat, humanity would always find a way to fight. The Retribution drifted in the void, its hull scarred, its systems flickering like the dying embers of a once mighty flame. To any observer, it looked like a ship on its last breath, just another casualty in the endless wars of the galaxy. That's exactly what the Dominion wanted to believe. "Stealth craft closing in," the tactical officer murmured. 3, maybe 4. Moving slow, scanning us. The Dominion wasn't taking any chances. They had just watched a single human warship obliterate an entire fleet. Now they wanted to make sure it was dead. But the Retribution wasn't dead. It was waiting. The captain remained still, his fingers resting lightly against the console. "Hold your fire," he ordered. Across the ship, tension crackled like static. The Dominion believed in precision, in clean, clinical victories. They didn't fight like humans did. They relied on overwhelming firepower and flawless tactics, and that's why they didn't understand what was about to happen. "Sir, they're deploying boarding teams," the comms officer said. The captain smiled. "Let them come." The first Dominion boarding pod latched onto the Retribution's hull with a dull thunk, its magnetic clamps securing it in place. Inside, the Dominion shock troopers prepared to breach. They were elite, hand-picked assassins, cybernetically enhanced for speed and efficiency. They had trained for every scenario, except this one. With a deafening boom, their pod detached, from the inside. For a split second, the Dominion troopers realized what had happened. Before their pod was violently ejected back into space, their screams lost in the vacuum. "That's one," the captain muttered. "How many more?" "2 more teams just attached to Deck 7, an officer replied. The captain nodded. "Send in the welcoming party." The Dominion assassins moved through the darkened corridors of the Retribution, their visors scanning for threats. They found nothing. No human resistance, no security turrets, just flickering lights and the soft hum of failing power. It was too easy. The squad leader signaled his team forward, motioning toward the reactor chamber. If they could reach the ship's power core, they could finish what the Dominion fleet had failed to do. Then the lights died. Total darkness. For a race that relied on technological superiority, that moment was terrifying. "Thermals online," the squad leader whispered. He switched to infrared. Nothing. Just empty corridors. Then something moved, a blur, a shadow. Before the squad leader could react, his second-in-command was gone, yanked into the blackness with a strangled gasp. Then the screaming started. Gunfire erupted, bright flashes lighting the corridor in bursts of chaos. But the humans didn't fight in the open. They struck from the shadows, from the vents, from above. They didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like monsters. One by one, the Dominion assassins fell. Not to precision strikes, not to advanced weaponry, but to something far worse. Brutality, blades, clubs, reinforced fists. Humans fought up close, where the Dominion's technological advantage meant nothing. The last surviving assassin stumbled back. His armor cracked, his visor shattered. He turned to run. A hand grabbed his throat. The assassin barely had time to react before he was slammed against the wall, his body pinned effortlessly. He looked up. A human, eyes cold, a soldier, bloodied but grinning. "Tell your masters," the human whispered, tightening his grip, "that the scrapyard rejects just sent their best to the grave." Then he crushed the assassin's throat. The Dominion boarding party was gone. The Retribution was still alive. And now it was hunting. The last Dominion assassin hit the cold metal floor, his body twitching before going still. Blood pooled beneath him, dark and thick, staining the deck of the Retribution. The air smelled of ozone, scorched metal, and something more primal. Victory. The humans had won. Again. "All clear," a soldier called out over comms. "Last of the boarders are down." The captain exhaled slowly, his grip easing on the railing. They had lured the Dominion in, let them think they were weak, then turned the battle into a slaughter, exactly as planned. The ship was still damaged, still barely holding together, but now they had a moment to breathe. "Damage report?" "Engines are still limping, but we've rerouted power," the chief engineer responded. "Weapons are online, but we need serious maintenance if we plan on another major engagement." "Shields?" The officer hesitated. "Best we can manage is 30%. If we take another full assault like before, we're not walking away from it." The captain nodded. They had to move. "Now, set course for Fort Vesper, maximum speed." The helm officer grimaced. "Sir, that'll push the engines past safe limits. If we don't," the captain interrupted. "We're dead anyway." The officer swallowed and nodded. "Aye, sir. Adjusting course." The Retribution shuddered as it forced itself forward, engines groaning under the strain. The ship wasn't built for finesse. It was built for survival, for sheer, ruthless endurance. And right now, it needed every ounce of that resilience. "Sir," the comms officer called out. "New transmission incoming." The captain frowned. "Dominion?" The officer shook his head. "Number this one's human." For a moment, the bridge was silent. Humanity had spent decades fending for itself, scraping by in a galaxy that barely tolerated its existence. They had no vast fleets, no sprawling empire, just outposts, scattered colonies, and a handful of warships that, compared to the Dominion, barely qualified as a navy. So who was calling them now? "Put it through," the captain ordered. The screen flickered. A man appeared. Weathered, scarred. His uniform wasn't standard military. No polished Dominion-style regalia, no pristine insignias. Just a battered flight suit, and the hard eyes of someone who had seen too many battles. "This is Admiral Doran of the Iron Fang," the man said. "I don't know who the hell you are, but I've been watching what you just did. You tore a Dominion fleet to shreds. You humiliated them." The captain didn't reply. He just waited. Doran leaned forward, a smirk forming on his face. "And I think it's about damn time we finally gave humanity a real fleet." The Retribution wasn't alone anymore, and the war had only just begun. The transmission cut out, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Admiral Doran. The name wasn't in any official records, not in the polished databases of Earth's dwindling naval forces or the bureaucratic mess that passed for humanity's political leadership. But for those who operated in the shadows, in the unregulated edges of space where Dominion law meant nothing, Doran was a legend, a warfighter, a ghost, a man who had refused to kneel when the Dominion had crushed Earth's first fleets decades ago, and now he was offering an alliance. The captain exhaled slowly, fingers tapping against the armrest of his chair. How close is the Iron Fang? Coordinates are attached to the transmission, the comms officer said. They're a few systems out. If we divert course, we can rendezvous in 6 hours. Tempting. The Retribution was bleeding. It had won the battle, but survival alone wasn't enough. If Admiral Doran was serious about uniting whatever scattered forces humanity still had, this war might be winnable. The captain made his decision. Change course, he ordered. The helmsman hesitated. Sir? You heard me, the captain said. Forget Fort Vesper. Take us to Doran. A murmur ran through the crew, but no one protested. Humanity had spent decades reacting to Dominion aggression, running, hiding, fighting with whatever scraps they could scavenge. But now? Now it was time to go on the offensive. The journey was tense. Even with their deception, there was no way to tell if Dominion stealth ships were still lurking nearby. The ship remained on high alert, weapons primed, ready for an ambush at any moment. But none came. For once, the void was quiet, until they reached the rendezvous point. The Iron Fang was waiting for them, and it wasn't alone. The Retribution dropped out of FTL into a system that barely registered on any official charts, just a dying red dwarf star and the scattered debris of long-forgotten battles. But the moment they arrived, the sensors lit up. Sir, the tactical officer breathed, you need to see this. The captain turned toward the main viewport, and his heart stopped. Dozens of ships drifted in the void before them. Not polished Dominion battle cruisers, not the sleek warships of the Zalari or the Varak. These were human ships. Some were old Earth warships, retrofitted and barely holding together. Others were civilian freighters, modified for battle with scavenged weapons. And at the center of them all, looming like a fortress built from war and defiance, was the Iron Fang. It was ugly. It was perfect. The comms crackled. Welcome to the rebellion, Admiral Doran's voice came through, rough and unyielding. The captain smirked. Humanity had been underestimated for too long. That was about to change. The bridge of the Retribution buzzed with an energy that had been absent for far too long. For years, humanity had fought alone, its fleets scattered, its colonies isolated, its forces barely clinging to survival. But now, before them, was something no one had believed possible. A fleet. A true human fleet. Incoming transmission, the comms officer reported. Put it through, the captain ordered. The screen flickered, and Admiral Doran's face returned, his expression unreadable. Behind him, the dim glow of his command deck was alive with motion. Officers moving with purpose, battle readiness in their every step. This isn't some grand military alliance, Doran said without preamble. This is survival. Every ship you see out there, they're here because they're sick of watching the Dominion burn our people alive. They're here because they know what you just did, because they saw you humiliate the greatest fleet the Dominion ever sent against us. The captain said nothing, waiting. Doran leaned forward. And they want to know one thing, Captain. The comms crackled, his voice cold and measured. Are you ready to take this fight to their doorstep? The captain exhaled, staring at the fleet before him. These weren't soldiers in the traditional sense. They were pirates, smugglers, defectors, fighters who had spent years on the fringes of space, waiting for something, anything, to rally behind. And now, they were looking at him. The Retribution had been dismissed as junk, a failure, a mockery of what a warship was supposed to be. Now it was a legend. The captain straightened, his voice calm but carrying the weight of everything that had brought them to this moment. "We're done running," he said. "We're done fighting for scraps. If we do this, we do it right. No more hiding. No more waiting for the Dominion to decide when the war starts." Doran watched him, expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he smiled. "Damn right." The comms cut out, and suddenly, the void around them was alive with movement. Ships began shifting into formation, engines roaring as battle groups assembled. This wasn't just a ragtag rebellion anymore. This was a strike force, and the Dominion had no idea what was coming. "Set course," the captain ordered. "Where to, sir?" the helmsman asked. The captain's lips curled into a smirk. The Dominion's homeworld. The bridge fell into stunned silence. Then, one by one, the crew grinned. After all, they had already proven that humanity didn't need the best ships, the strongest fleets, or the most advanced technology. They just needed to do what humanity did best: adapt, endure, and hit the enemy where it hurt the most. The Retribution surged forward, leading a fleet that should never have existed, carrying a fire that the Dominion had tried and failed to extinguish. The war wasn't just beginning, it was about to end. And this time, humanity wasn't playing by anyone's rules but its own.